Welcome to Life by Design for Chiropractors, episode 78.
Welcome to Life by Design, the podcast for chiropractors. Here's your host, Dr. Jamie Richards.
Welcome to Life by Design for Chiropractors, the voice of reason in chiropractic. I'm your host, Dr. Jamie Richards, and I'm joined today by my colleague, Dr. Crayshow Jug. Got a great email from fellow marketer, pal, Dean Jackson, and really loved the tone and the message. And it was really about the niche that exists in building a retention-based business in any sense. And obviously that applies specifically to chiropractic and something we've been talking about over and over and over again. So we dig into that today and talk about why the retention-based practice is cheaper and easier than most other styles of practices, at least in some terms. And of course, on the flip side, there's some more specific challenges that exist that need to be overcome. But if you can do that, it's a wonderful, wonderful way to practice. So check out today's episode, and at the end, listen to the information about the upcoming Life by Design training camp. This really is the A to Z implementation of a retention-based practice. It's your opportunity. We always take less than 10 docs. There's 4 or 5 spots remaining, and it's in a few weeks. Love to see you. Love to train with you. Love to have you here at the Life by Design Center. Enjoy today's episode of Life by Design for Chiropractors. Crayshow, welcome back to Life by Design for Chiropractors.
It feels like it's becoming a thing, which makes me super happy.
Yeah, I know. It's hopefully Mike doesn't get jealous.
He probably will, but that's okay.
Well, we'll hear Mike soon enough back on the show. Today we're talking about retention. And, it's funny how I opened an email yesterday from Dean Jackson, good pal Dean Jackson, who we really, if you haven't followed Dean's stuff, I think he's a marketing genius. I think he's sorry to interrupt you because I know your intro is going to be fab as always, but just so we're clear on who follows Dean Jackson, the marketing guys that are selling you marketing follow Dean Jackson. Right. Exactly. Yeah. And what I love about Dean is that it's very authentic stuff. It's super real and it works. Yeah, it works. And so anyway, we open an email, going back to just talking about email marketing. There's certain emails you open and there's certain ones you delete. Dean Jackson emails I open. And that's a really great thing to strive for, is that people open your emails, and even if they're busy and they see them, they put them aside so they don't skip over any email because they're afraid they would miss something that has tremendous value. And that's how I feel about Dean's emails. And so I open an email, and thankfully I did again. And it really nailed a couple of things. And it was talking about the value in what he calls the after unit, and how it's such an empty space for a consultant specifically. There's so many things about chiropractic. There's just so many programs for how to run a Facebook ad, how to get people on the front end. When it's sexy, it's what people want, and it plays into that. But the real profit, the real value in your practice all lies on the back end. And it made me feel really good about the targeting that we've taken on with building a retention-based practice and having that as, we've always seen this, Gracia. We've always known that the retention-based practice is the dream practice. And of course, you need marketing, you need front-end material, you need to deliver a great product and service and experience. But it's really about building a retention-based practice that is really where it's at. And so it led us to this conversation that we had off air for probably 30 minutes. And we realized that was probably the podcast. And so here we are again, like usual, jumping back on, minus all the, any expletives and other things that we shouldn't talk about on the air. And we're going to go back through some of those materials and content and talk about it. So Crayshow, you have a really great, we'll call it a diatribe here on marketing in general. Why don't you just jump in and go on a rant and tell us a bit about what you feel about marketing, what your advice is, and why a retention-based practice is such a better avenue to put your time and energy into.
Sure. So you're asking me for my values. When it comes to business, I do not value. I'm actually allergic to drama. I enjoy routine. I enjoy consistency. I enjoy the mundane things. I hated the stress of being in practice early and relying on new people coming through the door. And then, the highs of, oh my God, I saw double digit. I saw 10 new, which was a lot at the beginning for us. It was like, oh my God, I saw 10 new people And then, the next month it was like a disaster. Oh my God. I remember over the holidays, I remember my first December in practice, there was 0 new people and I was ready to like buy a gun and end it all. Like it was horrible. So I hated that. And then of course, because I didn't have a great understanding of the true value of what it is I was actually offering. The people would come in and then they would leave, right? Versus now, there's a consistency. The people who are staying around, the people who have been with us valuing chiropractic for years, it's just been a much easier conversation. It's been much better. When I first started online marketing, I found it very challenging and very time consuming, which is why it was really frustrating to find or to test enough offers to see what was, quote, converting new practice members. And I remember having a moment where I'm like, forget it. I'm just going to work on building a brand that everyone in the city is going to recognize me. There is little competition, which is good, which makes marketing costs super cheap on the front end when you're not competing. And then so pretty much everything switched to branding, putting out really good content, interacting with people, building a marketing style that was very similar to like back in the 1950s, where everyone knows the local butcher and everyone knows that if you're looking for a butcher in this neighborhood, this is the person that you go to, because they knew your family, because it became more about interacting and building relationships with people other than just creating transactions. And then what I started noticing is when you build relationships on the front end, you start to build relationships on the back end. And on the back end is the most important part of this whole process. I have yet to meet a super successful, happy chiropractor who does not have outstanding relationships and trust with the people that are coming in, which makes them want to, right? People are looking for excellent service and an excellent doctor. And it doesn't matter how great your offer on the front end is. If you're not giving them what they really want inside, they're going to leave. But if you are that person, they're going to be with you for life and they're going to trust you, which again, I've never met a chiropractor who doesn't want to have that.
Well, without the leadership skills, the systems, the communication, and the processes to build this retention-based practice, it doesn't really matter how many people you feed in. You're just going to be constantly on this revolving door where you're stressed because you only had 20 new people this month and you didn't see any growth. And I see this a lot when we do our consulting and I have clients, some of the newer ones. I'll get offices that are seeing 15, 20, even 22, 25 new people, and yet they're not growing anywhere near the rate that our personal practice is growing. And, we're year 3 in this practice. And I always tell people in year 1, we averaged 6 new patients a month. In year 2, we averaged 12 new patients a month. In the last year, we averaged a little bit above that. And now, it's great. Now the months are 10 to 15 new patients, which is more than enough for us to grow in leaps and bounds. I mean, we're growing by somewhere between 40 and 80 visits per week per year.
Yeah,
and there just comes a point, right, where you can't do that anymore. And the point is, we're so good at the retention-based side of it that, yes, we need new patients coming in and they're coming in, but we don't need them like a practice that is losing them and seeing 10, 15, 20 inactive clients every single month.
Right. But the key points to this, right, is there wasn't a slick, not that you don't have offers and not that you're not working on the front end, but there was no slick new offer that you made to make that happen over the past 3 years.
That's correct.
It was what was happening on the inside of the practice, right? It's like we talk about with our patients, like we're chiropractors, from inside out. So you start with you, and then you influence and build a team around you, and now you can go out and make a real impact in the community.
Well, that's it. And, again, to go back to what you said, it's not like we're not marketing. We're brand building. That's a big part of ours as well. We do have offers in there, whether it be, retargeting to the website for people to opt into our survey for health, people who are opting in. Now, of course, ours is a bit of a different animal at the center because we've got the training facility, we've got the cafe. So we have, people coming in on the front end. And I mean, that was always the purpose. It was always part of my marketing to feed people through the Fit Club, to feed people, coming in through Charlie's Cafe, and then to opt into our list through that and to get exposure
to our corrective care side. But the point is, all of that stuff is happening, but most of them aren't delivering 50 new patients a month. We're getting a handful of opt-ins. They get into our indoctrination series. They get into our regular email list. They get our emails and hopefully open them like I open Dean's. They watch our videos online. And, on average, it's, 6 months to a year. If someone does come in from an opt-in, 6 months to a year of them actually opening emails, watching videos, and so on. So, it's one of those things where the time spent building your brand is extremely valuable. It's cheaper and it's easier. It's a lot less stressful. But in order to put yourself in this position, this is what we were saying in the pre-show, we were thinking back to when we first started, if we had to do it different, what would we do? And, you have to be able to have a certain level of risk tolerance when you're opening or growing your business and practice. I knew that if I had to go $100,000 in debt, not that I wanted to, I was able to do that. I had secured, a certain amount of financing. Everything was put in place, and I made a ton of mistakes. Too big of a lease, too much expenditures on the build out. Not having any friggin' clue what I was doing. All of these problems on the front end. But what I did know, and I was willing to do, is I was willing to take the risk to do it. I see far too many younger grads and newer doctors who are in a position where they're $5,000 in debt and they're losing their mind. Right? What am I going to do? I need new people. And, show me a business, and I'm sure there's some, but show me businesses, Cratio, that are in a growth phase where, they're not probably securing capital from outside themselves, taking on debt, all with the intention of growing their business, both on the front end and then developing the service and the after unit type material to create the retention. But, you have to have risk tolerance. And so whether that means going in and renting a room somewhere and building your practice, I have a client that I'm working with and he's done a great job. He's great, strong revenues, low expenses because he's renting a room and he's making, $150,000 a year for himself and seeing whatever it is, 50 or 60 visits a week. To most people, they'd be, eating out of a can if they were seeing 50 to 60 visits a week because of the infrastructure they've created for themselves.
Yeah, it's always interesting in business. We tend to focus on the collections and the net income or the net revenue, right? But we never talk about what is actually taken home.
Right.
Like there's two parts to the equation. Yes, of course, you can make more money by billing more money. You can also make more money by not foolishly spending your money on things that are unnecessary.
Well, that's it. And, there's just a lot of BS in terms of how chiropractors see what their time and energy should be going into. And of course, you need new people. We're not saying that you don't, just saying that it takes time to do it the right way. You're going to get some leads along the way. You're going to have offers. You're going to have, opt-ins. You're going to have your email marketing. And you do need all that stuff. You're going to need your brand awareness and your brand building. But if you don't put yourself in a situation where you can manage, the day-to-day expenses of your business and your life to allow this to actually unfold while you're working your tail off, you're going to be constantly stressed, right? You're going to be constantly anxious. So yes, you should be working towards it. But one of the things I think people in this situation can do is go and secure some financing. Go and make sure that you can develop the tolerance to handle what needs to be done in order to grow, that you don't need 100 new people tomorrow where you have to close your doors. Because if that's the situation you're in, yes, you need to build a retention-based practice, but you're not even going to give yourself the time to do it.
Well, I mean, not only that, I think that's a great step, obviously, but I think that relies on a step before, which is have some self-awareness. I think, and I felt guilty to this when I first started in practice. We tend to listen to the people on the stage, telling us what they want, which is great. That's what they want, and that's their thing. But maybe you don't want that. Maybe you don't want to see 700 people, or you don't want to be the guy or the gal in your community. Maybe you just want to have a really decent practice that offers us really great care, and you want to spend time growing a family or doing something else. You have to be really clear on what it is that you want to accomplish and how it is that you want to practice.
Well, I'll tell you an interesting project I've done with some clients. I won't go into it fully just because it's something we do with our clients, but just you can kind of get a gist of it, creating a dream budget. And it's something that I think is very powerful. Not just asking yourself what you want, but what it would cost to have what you want. And that'll help you reverse engineer a bit of the work to get to that point where what type of practice you're going to need to have to fuel the life that you want. But it really does lead to that important question, which is, is this what you want? Is this what you think that you want? And I find a lot of people, when we do the strategic planning portion of our training, it's amazing how many times the practice people want is a 300 visit week practice. And I don't know where that number came from in terms of defining, what is successful, but that's the number. If you have a 300 visit week practice, you're somehow successful. It's amazing how many people want that, Cratio. And then when you ask them, do you want that? And here's what it's going to take to get that. And here's what that looks like in terms of an operations standpoint. Most of them have never actually thought through that. They've just been told that's what success is. So that's what they want.
Yeah, it's interesting. And again, I'm just speaking from experience because I'm still making this mistake over and over again. We tend to think that the busier and the bigger things grow, the easier they're going to get, but it's exactly opposite.
Mm-hmm.
If you're responsible for running a really high volume practice, you are busy. Like there is a lot of moving parts in order to make that successful. It's a lot easier to be renting a room and seeing, 100 visits a week. That's much less complicated. And neither of them are good or bad. It all depends on what it is that you're trying to achieve.
Yeah. Well, it leads us to really the point of this podcast. And that's that to move past everything and to get into this space where you're happy and excited and less stressed and less anxious, you have to build a retention-based practice. There's just absolutely zero question about this. After this many years, of course, knowing that it was right on the front end, here we are 15 years later, it is the way to practice. And when I look at, my success surveillance system, the statistics of this practice and how it's grown over the last 3 years and what it's taken in terms of the number of new patients, conversion percentages, it works. And it works to the point where it reduces so much stress and anxiety about getting the next new person because people will stay and they will understand it and they will value it. And then they will tell other people. And it's just this replicatable process that, if done properly with the right mindset, the right leadership abilities, and the right development of yourself, is just without question the way to practice. And you'll hear me talk about it in the intro, guys. Of course, if you want to train on that, that's what we do. We don't very often talk about what we actually do at Life by Design because most of the time you just find us anyway, or you have a general idea, but that's what we do. That's what training camp is. That's what our training program is how to run and thrive in a retention-based practice. So I know coming up, Cratio, we've got our next training camp. It is November the 9th, I want to say. And so you're going to get this podcast in advance of this. I think there's 4 spots left. We keep it super small group, 10 docs max. So we can really dig in. And I'm going to go through, and I know Cratio's there with us sometimes, everything. When I say everything, from the point somebody calls your office to the point where they leave your practice and you're recalling them back and you're repeating that cycle over and over again, I'm going to walk you through every single step, every single piece of the process. I'll give you everything, whether you're a Life by Design elite doctor or you're just coming to training camp. You're going to have every single piece of the puzzle that you're going to need to implement this. So please check that out. I'll put it in the show notes. Love to see you there. Love to train with you. Love to train in the Fit Club with you. Love to have you see the center and see how this can look for you. If this is something that you want to develop, not just on this scale, but on a pared back scale, how it operates. You want to come on the Thursday and hang out and practice with us, see how people interact, see how the flow works. All of that is open to you. Come hang out at the house, have lunch. Let's do this. Let's train together. If you're a listener to the podcast, I know you want to jump in. So check it out in the show notes or just shoot me a message and we'll go from there. lifebydesignforchiropractors.com/podcast. Find today's episode. And thank you as always. And thanks to you, Cratio, for listening to Life by Design for Chiropractors, the voice of reason in chiropractic.
Welcome to Life by Design, the podcast for chiropractors. Here's your host, Dr. Jamie Richards.